You did not stop here by accident. Something brought you to this exact moment. Not curiosity, not boredom, not the random drift of fingers scrolling through an endless feed. Something deeper, something that does not have a name in any language, but that you have felt before, quietly, in the middle of an ordinary day. When a thought about him crossed your mind and refused to leave, you felt it, didn't you? That pull, that inexplicable sense that this particular man with his silences and his distance and his eyes that carry something heavy behind them, was placed in your life for a reason you have not yet been able to fully explain, even to yourself. You are not imagining it. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds ever to study the architecture of the human soul, spent his life trying to understand why certain souls find each other, why certain connections feel less like coincidence and more like something that was written before either person was born. He called it something beyond chemistry, beyond attraction. He called it the meeting of two wounded worlds. And he believed that when the right souls encounter each other, healing begins not with words, not with grand gestures, but with simple, sacred recognition. You recognize something in him. And that recognition, that quiet, persistent feeling that this man's pain somehow speaks to something inside you, is exactly why you are here right now. This is not a coincidence. This message was not placed in your path by accident. What you are about to hear will not simply comfort you. It will shift something. It will name what you've been feeling, but could not yet say out loud. And by the time these words are finished, you will understand not only who he is, but who you are in the story of his healing. Stay here. Every word ahead was arranged for you. Before we speak about him, we have to speak about you, because you are not someone who loves simply. You never were. While others gave pieces of themselves, you gave completely. While others kept careful count of what they offered and what they received in return, you simply gave, from a place so deep inside yourself that even you sometimes forgot where giving ended and where you began. You have loved people through their worst nights. You have sat with someone else's pain when no one sat with yours. You have chosen patience in moments that deserved rage, chosen gentleness when the situation called for nothing of the kind. You have swallowed your own tears so that someone else could fall apart in peace. And there were nights, quiet, still nights when the world around you had gone to sleep, when you lay awake and asked yourself whether any of it mattered, whether the love you poured so freely into others was building anything, whether someone, somewhere, was capable of receiving what you gave without wasting it. Those nights did not go unnoticed. That love, every ounce of it, every silent sacrifice, every moment you chose someone else's comfort over your own, was not wasted. Carl Jung believed that the soul keeps its own record, that what we give from a place of genuine depth does not disappear. It accumulates. It becomes the very thing that makes us capable of something greater than ordinary love. You were never pouring into empty vessels for nothing. You were being prepared. The giving you have done, the kind that exhausted you, the kind that sometimes made you question your own worth, was not a mistake. It was a refinement. It was a universe shaping you, specifically, into the only kind of soul capable of standing beside a man as deeply wounded as the one who has entered your life. You were not broken by your love. You were made ready by it. And that matters more than you currently understand. Now we can speak about him. He is not a difficult man in the way the world uses that word. He is not careless. He is not cold by nature. He is not someone who enjoys distance or chooses silence because he does not care. If you have felt that about him, if you have stood in his presence and sensed warmth beneath the walls, tenderness behind the armor, then you were reading him correctly. He is a man carrying a shadow. Carl Jung introduced the world to the concept of the shadow self, the part of the human psyche that holds everything a person was taught to hide, suppress, and be ashamed of. For most people, the shadow carries insecurity, fear, unresolved grief. But for a man who has been wounded deeply by love, the shadow holds something even heavier. It holds a memory of the moment he decided that vulnerability was dangerous. Something happened to him. It may have been a single catastrophic betrayal, a love that opened him completely and then destroyed him. It may have been something quieter, something that accumulated over years, a childhood where tenderness was not safe, a relationship where his softness was used against him, a moment where he reached toward someone and found nothing there. Whatever it was, he learned a lesson he was never meant to learn. He learned that to be seen is to be hurt. And so he built the walls, not out of pride, not out of cruelty, out of survival. The distance you sometimes feel from him, the moments where he pulls back just as something real begins to form between you, that is not rejection. That is a wounded soul doing the only thing it knows how to do when something feels too important to risk losing. He retreats because he cares. He goes silent because your presence reaches something in him that terrifies him with its warmth. Jung said that a man's shadow does not dissolve in isolation. It dissolves only when someone refuses to be frightened away by it. When someone stays, you are still here, and that means something he does not yet have the words to tell you. Before we go any deeper, welcome to Jungian Love Codes. If these words are landing somewhere real inside you, please subscribe to this channel, hit the bell icon, and select all notifications. Every single video on this channel was created to shift how you see yourself and the love you deserve. Now let's continue. There is something he has never told anyone, not his closest friend, not the person he was with before you, not the family member who thinks they know him best. There's a wound sitting at the center of this man that has never been spoken aloud, because speaking aloud would require him to admit that it still bleeds. And a man who has built his entire survival around appearing unaffected cannot afford to admit that something still bleeds. But it does. Carl Jung spent decades studying what happens to the human psyche when love becomes a source of pain instead of safety. He found that the wound does not simply heal with time, the way the world promises it will. It goes underground. It becomes part of the architecture of how a person moves through the world, how they attach, how they pull away, how they behave in the exact moment when something real is within reach. This man was not always this way. There was a version of him, younger, softer, unguarded, who believed in love without conditions, who gave himself fully to someone or something and was not careful about it because he did not yet know he needed to be careful. He was open in a way that only someone who has not yet been truly hurt can be open, completely, without armor. Without the calculated distance, he carries now like a second skin. And then something broke that open person. Maybe it was a woman who received his vulnerability and used it as a weapon. Maybe it was an abandonment that arrived without warning. Someone who was there completely and then was simply gone, leaving him to make sense of an absence that never fully made sense. Maybe it was years of being the one who cared more, gave more, stayed longer, tried harder, and receiving indifference in return until the trying finally exhausted itself into silence. Jung called this the wounding of the anima, the inner feminine principle that lives inside every man and governs his capacity to feel, to connect, to love without strategy. When the anima is wounded, a man does not simply become guarded. He becomes a stranger to his own tenderness. He forgets what it felt like to reach toward someone without bracing for impact. He stops trusting the part of himself that wants to love. That is who is standing in front of you, not a cold man, not an unavailable man, a deeply wounded one who has forgotten that his own softness was ever a safe thing to possess. Every wall you have encountered in him is not a personality. It is a scar, and scars, as Jung understood, are not permanent sentences. They are simply places that have not yet been given the right conditions to heal. You are those conditions. This is the part you need to hear very carefully. Because the question you may be asking yourself right now, the quiet, uncertain question that you have perhaps asked in the privacy of your own mind more than once, is this: why me? Of all the people in his life, of all the souls that have crossed his path, why would I be the one to reach what others could not? It is a fair question. And Carl Jung spent his life building the answer to it. Jung believed that human beings do not connect randomly. He believed that the psyche, operating beneath the level of conscious choice, is always seeking what it needs in order to become whole. He called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of a soul moving toward its own completeness. And he discovered something remarkable about this process. The people who appear in our lives at the most significant moments are not accidents. They are mirrors. This man did not find you randomly. His soul recognized something in yours before his conscious mind had any idea what was happening. The part of him that is still capable of healing. The part that exists beneath the wounds, beneath the walls, beneath the survival strategies he has spent years perfecting. That part saw you and registered something it had almost forgotten was possible. Safety, not the kind of safety that comes from the absence of risk. The deeper kind, the kind that Jung described as the recognition of a soul that will not weaponize your tenderness against you. The kind that says, without words, without explanation, I have been seen by this person, and they are still here. You carry something he lost access to in himself. Your capacity for patience in the face of his silence. Your ability to remain warm when he instinctively creates distance. Your refusal to punish him for the walls he built before he ever met you. These are not small things. These are not simply personality traits. In the language of Jungian psychology, you represent the living proof that vulnerability does not always end in destruction. Every time you have stayed, when leaving would have been easier, you have been speaking directly to the wounded part of him. Every time you have met his silence with presence instead of pressure, you have been doing something no one else in his life has known how to do. You have been showing him, slowly, quietly, through everything you are rather than anything you've said, that the version of himself he buried to survive, the open, unguarded, tender version, is still safe to be. That is not something anyone can perform. That is not something that can be faked or forced. That is a soul recognition, and it is rare in a way that very few people in this lifetime ever experience. And here is what makes this real, because it would be easy to hear everything said so far and wonder whether it is simply beautiful words, whether this is hope dressed in the language of psychology. So let's speak practically for a moment. Let us speak about what you may have already noticed, the small, specific, undeniable signs that something is already shifting in him, whether he is aware of it or not. Watch the way he lingers. A wounded man who has mastered the art of emotional distance does not linger. He enters conversations with an exit already planned. He keeps interactions brief, because brief is safe. But near you, watch carefully. He finds reasons to stay a little longer than he intended. The conversation should have ended 5 minutes ago, and he is still there, still talking, still finding one more thing to say, because some part of him is not ready to leave your presence yet. Watch the way he becomes protective. He may not say it. He may not even fully understand why he does it. But when something threatens your comfort or your peace, something in him responds before his logic can stop it. A sharpness enters him, a quiet but unmistakable shift, because the part of him that is healing has already decided, on a level below conscious thought, that you matter. Watch the way he softens specifically with you. The version of him that exists in your presence is not the same version that exists everywhere else. Others may describe him as closed, as hard to reach, as someone who keeps the world at arm's length, and they are not wrong about the man they experience. But they are not seeing what you see, because with you, there are moments, brief, unguarded moments that he probably wishes he could take back, where the walls come down just slightly, where something genuine crosses his face before he can compose himself again. Those moments are not accidents. Those are the first signs of a wounded soul beginning, slowly and cautiously, to believe that healing might actually be possible. He is already changing near you. He just does not have the language for it yet. Pause here for just a moment. If no one has reminded you lately that the love you carry is not a burden, it is a gift that the right person will spend a lifetime being grateful for. This channel will keep reminding you. Subscribe to Jungian Love Codes. Turn on all notifications and stay close. The most important part is still ahead. There's a word Jung used that the modern world has nearly forgotten. Wholeness, not happiness, not success, not the achievement of everything a person sets out to build. Wholeness, the state of a human soul that has gathered back the pieces of itself that were lost, abandoned, or buried beneath years of survival. Jung believed that this was the deepest hunger of every human being alive. Not to be loved simply, not to be admired or desired or chosen, but to be whole, to become, finally and completely, the full version of the person they were always meant to be. And he discovered something that the world of psychology is still catching up to. A wounded soul cannot find its way to wholeness alone. Isolation does not heal deep wounds. Time does not heal deep wounds. Distraction, achievement, the building a wall so thick that nothing painful can enter. None of these heal the wound at the center of a man who learned that love was not safe. They manage it, they contain it, but they do not dissolve it. What dissolves it is witness, not a fixer, not someone who arrives with a plan to rescue him from his own damage. Jung was very specific about this distinction. The soul does not want to be rescued. It wants to be seen. It wants someone to look directly at the wounded parts, the shadow, the silence, the walls, the moments of inexplicable distance, and remain, fully, without flinching, without making the wound mean something terrible about its carrier. That is what you've been doing. You have not been trying to fix him. You have been doing something far more powerful. You have been witnessing him, staying present in the face of his armor, refusing to take his distance personally enough to leave, continuing to show up as the full, warm, patient version of yourself, even when he gave you very little to hold on to. In Jungian terms, you've been the mirror his soul has been searching for, and in that mirror, slowly, he is beginning to recognize himself again. But here is what this message would be incomplete without, because everything said so far could be misread. It could be heard as permission to pour yourself out endlessly, to disappear into his healing, to make his wholeness the project of your life at the expense of your own. And that is not what this is. That is not what Jung intended. And that is not what you deserve. Jung gave a warning that belongs in this conversation. He said that when a person loses themselves inside another's shadow, when they abandon their own individuation, their own journey toward wholeness, in order to carry someone else's, both souls suffer. The one being carried never fully learns to stand, and the one doing the carrying slowly forgets what it felt like to walk freely. You cannot heal him by erasing yourself. You cannot love him into wholeness by shrinking your own needs into a size that does not inconvenience his wounds. The patience you offer must come from a full cup, not a depleted one. The warmth you extend must be something you genuinely have to give, not something you are performing out of fear that he will leave if you stop. Your peace is not negotiable. Your self-worth is not something you place on the table as a sacrifice to his healing process. If there are moments when his wounds express themselves as coldness toward you, as inexplicable withdrawal, as behavior that chips away at your dignity, those moments require a boundary, not more patience. The love that heals a wounded man is strong love, grounded love, love that knows its own value clearly enough to say, I am here, and I want to witness your healing, but I will not disappear into it. That boundary does not make you less loving. It makes the love real enough to actually work. Now close your eyes for just a moment, not literally. Stay here, but allow yourself to feel what is being described. There's a version of this story that is still ahead of you, a version where the walls have come down, not all at once. That is not how healing works, but gradually, the way winter gives way to something warmer, slowly enough that you almost miss it, until one day you realize the coldness has been replaced by something you can actually rest inside of. He will look at you differently. There will come a moment, and you will know it when it arrives because it will feel unlike anything that came before it, where he looks at you with the full weight of what he has never been able to say, and you will see in his eyes that the wounded man and the healed man have finally found a way to exist in the same body. And he will know, without needing to explain it, that you are the reason. The loyalty that a man carries after he is healed beside someone is not ordinary loyalty. It is the kind that does not wander, the kind that remembers in the quiet moments exactly what it felt like to be lost inside its own damage, and exactly who stayed anyway. He will not take your presence for granted the way someone takes for granted the things that came easily, because you did not come easily. You came through the hardest part of him, and you did not leave. That kind of love, when it finally lands, is unshakable. It becomes the safest place two people have ever built together. A home not made of walls, but of everything that was honestly survived, honestly witnessed, and honestly chosen, again and again, even when choosing was difficult. That is what is ahead. That is what this has always been moving toward. You came into this video carrying something. Maybe it was confusion about why you feel so deeply connected to a man who struggles to let you in. Maybe it was quiet exhaustion from loving someone whose wounds sometimes make him difficult to reach. Maybe it was simply the unnamed feeling that something important is happening between you and him, and you needed someone to confirm that you are not imagining it. You are not imagining it. What you carry, this love, this patience, this rare and stubborn refusal to give up on a soul you recognize as worth staying for, is not weakness. It is not naivety. Carl Jung would call it the highest expression of what the human soul is capable of. The willingness to stand in the presence of another person's damage and say, quietly, without making a performance of it, I see you, all of you, and I am not leaving. That is not something everyone is capable of. You are not everyone. You are always enough. You are always the rare kind. And the love that is coming, the healed, whole, unguarded love of a man who finally understands what he almost lost, will show you exactly how true that has always been. Trust what you feel. Trust where you are. Trust that this is not the end of the story. It is the moment the real one begins. If this message found you today, it was not by chance. Subscribe to Jungian Love Codes right now. Hit the bell and turn on all notifications. Come back tomorrow, because the universe is not done speaking to you yet, and neither are we.